2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Did it work now? No, it's not working
1,
yet.
2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Lesson call is this 1, 2, 1, 2. There we go. Thank you. 1, 2. Sorry, Chief.
So it should be fine here?
It is fine. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Is that better? Okay, all right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Before we proceed, I just want to make sure that you remember some of the faces here. You will remember Mr. Paul Pretorius, SC, the head of the legal team, of course. You will remember Mr. Nombembe, the head of the investigation team. You might not know or might not have seen the lady next to me here. She is Ms. Bridget Shabalala. She is the acting secretary of the commission. You will remember that we had Dr. Devier, who was the secretary of the commission. Then we had Mr. Pedler, who was acting secretary, and then he left, and we then got Ms. Bridget Shabalala. So I just wanted to make sure you know who is here. Thank you very much for coming to this media briefing. The reason why I thought it would be a good idea that we have this media briefing is that since we launched the application for an extension of the lifespan of the commission in December, there have been inquiries from the media about certain aspects of the application for extension. And I thought that if I granted an interview to one or two, I might not have time to grant the interview to everybody who might wish to have an interview on these and other matters. So I thought we should maybe have a media briefing where everybody has an opportunity to ask whatever questions they wish to ask about the extension, and we can clarify. But also, I thought that we have not had a media briefing for quite some time. You will recall that before we started with hearings in August of 2018, we used to have almost regular media briefings where we sought to update you on what the commission was doing. But since the hearing started, there have not been many of those, partly because I thought, well, the proceedings of the commission are broadcast. You are there, everybody hears what evidence is being given in the commission. So most of the things that you would be interested in, you have access to. So, but I thought that since it's been quite long since we last had a media briefing, maybe we should have one at the beginning of this year, particularly because, as you will have seen if you have read the affidavit relating to the extension application, that our plan is that this year should be the last year of the commission. So I thought that those matters make it appropriate that we have a media briefing. Now, of course, we are alive to the fact that as a commission, we are there to serve the public, and we would like to make ourselves as accessible to the public and the media as possible. Time doesn't always permit, but whenever we can, we will try. But also, to the extent that the media, on behalf of the public, may have some questions that they would like to be clarified in relation to the commission, this would be an opportunity to clarify them. But very largely, for today, I'm looking at issues that may relate to the extension. It may be that there may be one or two questions that fall outside of that. We will do our best to deal with that as well. If certain questions require information that we don't have at hand, we will make every effort to make sure that after the media briefing, attempts are made to supply the information that may have been asked for. Can I have water? Now, I will just make a few remarks about the media, about the extension application that we have launched, and thereafter I can deal with questions that may be asked. Before I do that, I just want to say, you will remember that originally the Commission was supposed to finish its work within 6 months, it's 180 days. We applied to the High Court for an extension of that period, and we got an extension that will take us to the end of February this year. We thought that that time would be enough for us to finish the work. But in the affidavit that we used in the first application for an extension, I made it clear to the court that when we said that when we asked for an extension of time up to the end of February 2020, we were making an assessment of how much time we would need based on what we knew at the time. And of course, it was right at the beginning of the work of the Commission. So there was still a lot that we would see as the investigations continued and unearthed stuff that we needed to see. So it was an assessment that was very much based on how much time other commissions had taken before. And we were aware that the assessment that we made, that the time up to end of February 2020 would be enough, was subject to developments that we would have once the investigations have started. Of course, there has been a lot of investigation since then, and it has become quite clear that the time was not adequate. So that is why we have had to apply for an extension of the time that we had been granted. Now, when we had to consider the question of how much time we must ask for this time around, one had to look at the work that had been done by the Commission. One had to look at the work that still needs to be done. And all of that needed to be done within the context of the terms of reference of the Commission. Why that has to be is simply that the terms of reference of the Commission are critical in the sense that as a Commission, we can't stop or not do or not investigate what falls within the terms of reference. As long as something falls within the terms of reference, we are obliged to investigate it. Now, what happened, as some of you might recall, is that when this commission had to be established, there was quite some issue about its terms of reference, how wide they would be. And you might recall that there were people who were saying, well, it must look at state capture going back to I don't know how many decades and all of that. So what happened was that when the public protector issued her report, there were specific issues that she identified as the issues that this commission should investigate. And when there was an application to the High Court in Pretoria in relation to the public protector report and the former president, where the High Court in Pretoria ultimately made an order that the commission be established, the order of the High Court basically related to the issues that the public protector had identified. So the High Court said the commission must investigate the issues that have been identified by the public protector. But what happened was that when the terms of reference were framed, were formulated, the terms of reference went far beyond the issues that the public protector had identified and the issues that the High Court in its order had said must be investigated. But we as the Commission simply have to carry out the mandate as set out in the terms of reference. Now, when we were looking at how much time we must ask for this time, if one looked at the terms of reference, it was quite clear to me that we would need at least a few more years if we were going to investigate everything that fell under the terms of reference. But if we were to simply seek to finalize the issues as contemplated in the Public Protector's report, we would not need as much time. So the question that arose was, what do we do? I don't have the power to amend the terms of reference. That power resides with the President. And whatever the court has said we must investigate, which is the same as what the Public Protector has said, also has to be investigated unless the court were to change its order. It appeared to me that there are issues that the public really need to be finalized by the Commission, and the issues, it appeared to me, are issues that the Public Protector had identified. And those really revolve around the state capture. So what we then said in the affidavit is that there will have to be a process in terms of which we must reflect on how we must deal with this. And as the affidavit that we have filed in the High Court reflects, I have power under paragraph 7 of the terms of reference to refer some of the matters that fall within the Commission's terms of reference, refer some of the matters to other investigations. There's a reference to an inquiry. In other words, I have the power to refer some matters under term of reference 7 to some investigative bodies. And there's a reference, as I say, to an inquiry. But exactly what that inquiry is might need further consideration and reflection on what the implications thereof is and what the form of that inquiry is that is contemplated in the terms of reference. That's a decision that I must still take. I'm still looking at the matter. But one of the routes that can be followed is for me to, excuse me, approach the President and request the President to consider amending the terms of reference so that they are not as wide as they are. But also in amending the terms of reference, the President could consider whether some of the matters that at present fall within the terms of reference could be taken out of the terms of reference but be subjected to some other investigation or process. But that would be up to the President to decide. As long as if the President says, no, I'm not going to amend the terms of reference, then we are obliged to carry on until we have fully carried out the mandate as stated in the terms of reference. But if the President says, okay, we'll amend the terms of reference so that the Commission can finish ABCD, and then what has not been finished would be dealt with through other processes, then that is what would need to happen. At this stage, the Commission has had, I think by end of last year, it had had evidence from more than 150 witnesses. It had set for more than 190 days, I think. The transcript of the evidence that has been led, that has been recorded, by end of last year, it was more than 27,000 pages. And the exhibits, including the statements of witnesses and various exhibits that get ended up when a witness is giving evidence. The last time, I think at some stage before the end of last year, we were talking of more than 450,000 pages. So there is a lot of work that the Commission has done. There is massive evidence that it has collected. And it's important that at least issues of state capture can be finalized so that the public knows exactly what happened with regard to that issue. What I have realized through my involvement in this commission, and I've said this before, is that corruption is very deep in our society. There is a lot of corruption. I believe that even with what the Commission has seen, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. There is a lot that this Commission would have to hear if it was to sit and exhaust the terms of reference as they are. So, but I took the view in regard to the extension application that there was an outcry for a commission because of the state capture, and probably it is in the public interest that we bring finality on that issue as soon as we can. So that's what I wanted to explain, and but I'll be quite happy to take questions around the issue of the extension application, and there may be time for a few more questions that may be asked. If we can answer them without needing any information, we will try and do that. Thank you. You will take the
Thank you very
questions.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief Justice, for that briefing. We'll now give an opportunity for question and answers. I'm going to take first four hands. Please introduce yourself and from which media house you're representing. And then we're going to take first four hands and then we'll deal with that. I'll start 1, 2, 3, and 4. These two rows. Thank you.
Deputy Chief Justice, my name is Itakana Magwedza from Newsroom Africa. How much has the Commission spent so far, and with the extension, how much do you envisage you will require?
Thank you. Yes. Oh, covered. Thank you. This gentleman here, Timbani, this one here, this one in front here. Thank you.
DCJ, my name is Ndebo. I'm with the SABC. We were expecting that maybe the judgment has come out in terms of the extension, but it seems that hasn't happened. You're still waiting for the court judgment in terms of the extension of the lifespan of the commission. And in terms of the issues that relate to state capture, how much work is still outstanding? Because you're saying that the main thing that was to be investigated, according to the public protector, was the issue on state capture. So how much work is still outstanding? And in terms of the expenses by the commission, how many days would you want, and how much would you want to complete the job?
Thank you. Thank you, Ndebo.
Thank you very much. My name is Zingisa from the Sunday Times. Deputy Chief Justice, I've got a couple of questions. For instance, on the opinion just on the commission itself, there's a lot of varying public opinions about whether it is a waste of time. I mean, I'm a Maskandi fan. There's even a song by Thokozani Langa who says that your commission is taking sides in terms of races. You know, it does. I'll get you the song so you can listen to it. But anyway, so do you agree with the view in particular that says the commission is a complete waste of time? Others are calling it a tea and biscuits gossip session. And second point is on the former president that many view as the King Don of state capture. Some have expressed the view that you are in fact soft on him, in particular regarding the two previous postponements that you granted to him. Would you agree with that particular opinion as well? Thank you very much.
The last question, DCG. Are they enough now?
No, I think...
okay, we'll cut it, then we'll come back to the second
for
one.
now, because... and maybe what we'll do is, after this, let's allow one person to put a question and let me respond, because otherwise I'm not taking detailed notes. Some of the questions are quite detailed. With regard to what the Commission has spent, this has been made public at some stage last year, how much the Commission had spent up to a certain date. I'm told that there's an amount that I've got here that I'm told has been made available, but I would just like something to be checked before I make this public. So I think we will prepare a media statement to make sure that we give correct information in terms of what's been allocated for the rest. So the issue about how much has been spent, I would rather send you, get this acting secretary to send you a media statement that will have had this checked properly. In terms of how much work is still outstanding, if you go to the Public Protector's report, and if you go to the founding affidavit that we filed in the High Court in regard to the current extension application, you will see the kinds of issues that the Public Protector had identified. They very much relate to Gupta-related activities in terms of business and tenders with government, and what officials and what politicians may have been involved. They also relate to possible breaches of the relevant legislation relating to the executive about ethical conduct. That's what they relate to. So some of the work has been done, and I think a lot has been done. You know, we already had a lot of witnesses relating to ESCOM, relating to Transnet, relating to Denel, which falls within the terms of within the issues that the Public Protector articulated. But there are areas which we must still look into. So my own assessment is that if we are going to focus on those issues that the Public Protector had identified, we should be able to finish the work of the Commission within this year. But again, one has made assessments before and they have proved not to be right. But when we look at what we have done and we look at what is in the public domain, what has come out at some stage or another through the media about where there may have been involvement of Gupta-linked entities and individuals in relation to tenders and government business, I believe that the time that we have asked for is reasonable. And if it were not to be enough, I think it would be simply a matter of the time that is needed to finish the report. So my belief is that before the end of the year, we will have come to the stage of commencing with the writing of the report. But if we don't finish that by end of the year, 31 December, we might need a few more months to do that. So that's our estimate. That was the second question, but it did have some other related questions. As to people who say this commission is a waste of time, people are entitled to their own opinions, to take whatever view they take. I believe this is a very important commission. I believe that the Chief Justice thinks it's a very important commission. That's why he asked me, his deputy, to chair it. I look at what it investigates. I think it's very crucial matters. And I think that it has done its job reasonably well. I don't think that we are perfect. We are not. But I think that we certainly do our best to do this job as well as we can. And I think that if this commission did not do this job, or if there was no commission that did this job, then the message would be people can engage in all kinds of corruption-related activities, and they can get away with it. I think it would be a very wrong message. I think as a country, we need everyone to know that if you cross the line, there will be consequences, because some of the people may be taking that view for whatever reason, maybe because they don't like what is coming out of the commission. Maybe they didn't want the commission to be there in the first place because it suits their own agendas, that there should not be this commission. But I have no doubt in my own mind that the overwhelming majority of South Africans see the value of this commission, and we certainly think it's a very important work that has to be done. If it's not there, then those who may have done certain things may as well just come back and continue, because then they will know that in this country you can do whatever and there'll be no consequences. Thank you. I think let's take questions one by one, okay, so that please just repeat, just remind me.
On the former president, preferential treatment.
Well, I don't think that I think I treat every person who comes, and every witness who comes here with respect, with dignity, and with courtesy. Everybody. I've sought to treat him as I treat everybody. I don't think that there are witnesses or implicated persons with whom I'm soft or anything, but people are entitled to take whatever view they take. I've no doubt that if I dealt with him in a certain way, there would be others who say the opposite, who would say, maybe I'm singling him out, I'm treating him differently. We seek to make sure that just as we want to be treated with respect, we treat everyone with respect. That's what we seek to do, but we will do our job without any fear, favor, or prejudice.
Thank you, colleagues. Just be brief and straight to the point. Yes, Kenny.
Deputy Chief Justice, my name is Kenny Mapanga from News 24. Just some clarity on your assessment based on the evidence brought before the Commission. Should you not receive another extension, for example, would the chair be able to make concrete findings? And then outside of the extension, due to the scale of what's coming out in the commission, have you considered or are you considering granting amnesty to persons that have come before the commission and given a truthful testimony?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you to repeat. I think your voice is very soft.
Oh, sorry, Chair.
So if you can raise it a bit, yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so it's Kenny Mapanga from News 24, and I just wanted some clarity on your assessment. Should the Commission not receive another extension, could the Chair make concrete findings on alleged state capture? And due to the scale of what's coming out in the Commission, have you considered or are you considering granting amnesty to those who have come before the Commission and given you a truthful testimony?
Thank you. Well, one, if we are not granted an extension, I don't even think we would be able to make any findings, because we can't make findings on the basis of an incomplete investigation. That would not be proper. So it would be a disaster if we were not granted an extension. But I hope that we will be granted an extension. And so far, I'm told by the Office of the State Attorney, which spoke to the Acting Secretary, that the deadline for notices of opposition has come and gone, and they have not received any notice of opposition. So at this stage, the information I have is that, excuse me, is that nobody has indicated or communicated to the State Attorney that they intend opposing the application. So if the matter is unopposed, then it's likely that it can be dealt with on the 11th. I think the 11th is maybe the date when it would be heard, but that date might change. The court might change the date, but that is the position as I understand it at the moment.
Thank you.
So I can't make findings if we don't get any extension, because very little is finalized, and probably it wouldn't serve much purpose to make findings on some things and leave a lot of things on hanging that have not been finalized. Thank you.
Can you just...
Yes, please just remind me of the... amnesty. Oh, amnesty.
Amnesty.
Oh, no. I'm not sure what you have in mind by amnesty, but maybe what you mean is whether I could make a recommendation that those that assisted the Commission by giving truthful and honest evidence in regard to certain important aspects, whether I would make a recommendation maybe that they should not be prosecuted and so on. Well, certainly if the extension is not granted, I can't do that on incomplete evidence, but at the end of the work of the Commission, the terms of reference allow me to refer some matters for prosecution, if I think I should do that. But there would be no problem in expressing the indebtedness of the Commission to certain witnesses who may have helped the Commission quite a lot. As to whether I would go one step further and express any recommendation that they should not be prosecuted, that is something that I would look into properly. But it may well be that if I can recommend that certain people be prosecuted, I can recommend that certain people should not be prosecuted. But it's something that I would look at the right time.
Last two hands in front, and then we're going to give the last round at the back. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Neo Gobe here from Power FM. My question is with regards to the extradition of the Gupta family. Has the Commission given up on trying to speak to authorities in India as well as the United Emirates to get the Guptas back to come and account? We do understand that when the Commission started, the Gupta family had given terms to the Commission that they would rather do it via audio link. So have you given up on that? And secondly, we do understand that there was an extension, or rather, the Gupta family members had requested for an extension of their passports. So have you been in discussion with the Minister of Home Affairs to perhaps try and grant the Gupta family the extension of their passports so that they can come into South Africa and then account for the alleged wrongdoing that they've done in the country? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let me start with this. The Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, or Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, informed me sometime last year that the Department of Justice was working on trying to ensure that the Guptas are brought back. He told me some of the challenges that they were having, but he said they would continue with those efforts. And I saw, maybe towards the end of the year, I saw something in the media that indicated that their efforts were continuing. So, but from our side as the Commission, we are going on with our work. If before we finish our work, they are brought back, we will look at what can be done and take it from there. But for the moment, my understanding is that the Department of Justice is pursuing that issue, and they will let us know from time to time what, whether they are succeeding or not. So if they come, we'll look at what is possible and what's not possible. But in the meantime, I'm hearing evidence that relates to some of the things that have been alleged against them, and we are continuing. Thank you.
Yes, Lee.
Thank you. This is Jane Ntakwana Ngadane, Eyewitness News. The legal team of the Commission had made an application for the former president to be issued with summons to appear. Are you convinced by the reasons that were advanced for him to eventually not offer that summons to eventually not be granted? And secondly, what impact in terms of your findings will it have if he were never to appear before the Commission by the time it concludes its work?
Well, I can't give you an answer in regard to the first question because that issue is still pending. The legal team has applied for me to authorize the acting secretary to issue a summons against him. That application has been adjourned to allow the legal team to file a replying affidavit, and the matter may still be decided at a later stage. So it would not be appropriate for me to talk about the merits, about whether the reasons are convincing or not. But with regard to the question whether if he were never to appear, what impact that would have on the work of the Commission. Well, I believe that it would be important that the Commission gets an opportunity to hear what he knows about all the allegations relating to state capture that the Commission has had. But if ultimately he doesn't appear, the Commission would wrap up its work on the basis of all the evidence that it would have had from everyone else and make its findings. Obviously, it would be preferable for the commission to have had evidence from implicated persons, and he was the head of state, and certain allegations have been made, in regard to him, and it would be important that one hears that evidence. But if for whatever reason we were to finish our work without him appearing, I'll make my findings based on the evidence of everyone else.
Show of hands from the back. Michael, and then at the back, start here, Tabani. Start here, is fine. Then Dadis will go to the back. Thank you.
Hi, DCJ. Michael from ENCA.
Yes.
A point of clarity, and I speak under correction, but it's my understanding that since the President instituted this Commission of Inquiry, he basically owns the findings and recommendations, and that he is not compelled legally to release that to the public at the end of this entire process. Is that correct? And secondly, if it were up to you, would you want it released publicly? Thank you.
Well, it is true that since this is a presidential commission, the report that I will prepare will go to the president, and that it would be his decision whether he releases it to the public or not. But my understanding, or my recollection, is that he has in the past said that he would release it to the public. I may be mistaken, but I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that for the kinds of issues that this commission is looking into, I have no doubt that the president will release the report ultimately to the public, or at least those portions. If there are portions that he might consider should not be released to the public, it might be a matter of certain portions not being released. But I have no doubt in my mind that the kinds of issues that the commission is looking at are the kinds of issues that he would also feel that the public should actually see the report and take it from there. I do know that the public protector's remedial action had instructed the president, after I have submitted the report, to communicate with Parliament to say what steps he would take. So it would be difficult to say these are the steps I will take, but without telling them what the commission said. So I believe that the president will. It's his decision to decide whether he does, it doesn't, but I'm confident that he will. Yeah.
Okay. Let's also go to the back.
DCJ.
It is on. You can speak into the mic.
DCJ, Brian Sokuta from the Citizen newspaper. Given the magnitude of revelations made before this commission by witnesses, are you not concerned about the slowness in the speed taken by law enforcement agencies?
Well, I don't know whether it would be appropriate to conclude that since the commission started, the law enforcement agencies are slow to act. Some of the evidence that I've had over the past 1.5 years, since August 2018, suggests that there may have been certain challenges in certain of the law enforcement agencies. It may be that that is being corrected, and that some of the challenges might take time to go away. But I am confident that the leadership of the various law enforcement agencies are trying their best to make sure that they carry out their functions in regard to matters that fall within the terms of reference of the Commission. In regard to many of the matters, they might need to wait until all the witnesses relating to a particular issue have given evidence. In regard to some matters, they might not need to wait. So I would like to believe that they appreciate the importance of acting in regard to such matters, but I also know that they would be cautious with regard to some of the matters, because while on the one hand, some members of the public might be saying, we want action, we want action, we want action. The leadership of various organizations, law enforcement agencies, will also appreciate that if they rush taking some cases to court too much without the work that needs to be done having been done properly, then they will have a problem when the public says, but people are just getting acquitted, there are no convictions. So they have got to look at all the issues properly, and they have got to make sure that whatever they take to court, as far as possible, from their part, they've done the best they can to make sure that justice is done.
We'll take the last two hands, colleagues. Our time is about to expire. Just last two hands. If there's last hand here, then we'll wrap up. Thank you.
Actually, it's long past. It should have been 1 o'clock.
Sorry for the chair. My name is Mangoba Mchunu from SABC. My question, Chair, is that many people have the view that, without the Guptas coming to the Commission to give their side of the story, this will simply be, sort of a wasteful exercise, not sharing their side of the story, not having them defend themselves with regards to this issue. Are you concerned at all that you might have to conclude this commission without hearing at all from the Gupta brothers or their side of the story? And secondly, Chair, just to ask whether, is the Chair happy with the work of the legal team as well as the investigators? The reason why I asked this is because last week we've heard the Chair, sort of displaying his unhappiness with some of the work that had been done by the legal team. Are you happy? Are you satisfied with their work?
Let me start with the last question. I'm quite happy with the work of the legal team. I'm quite happy with the work of the investigation team. That doesn't mean that they are perfect. They are not perfect. I'm not perfect either. So there may be areas where I need to talk to them, raise issues with them. But on the whole, I think they are doing a very good job, both the legal team and the investigation team. These teams, as well as the secretariat, these teams consist of people who are very dedicated to the work of this commission. They work long hours. I make all kinds of demands on all of them, and they do their best to try and make sure that this work is done properly. The fact that from time to time I might raise issues, question them, maybe it's just a reflection of the fact that they've made sure that I expect a high standard from them. So I'm happy, they are working hard, but that doesn't mean that they are perfect, just like I'm not perfect. With regard to the Guptas, people mustn't think that just because the Guptas might not give evidence, it will mean that the commission did not get a good picture of what happens. The Guptas would have been witnesses, may have been implicated persons. I know that in terms of the cross-examination affidavits that were filed by some of them, they denied certain things and didn't give a lot of information. So it may well be that even if they came, they wouldn't give a lot of information. But we would have preferred to have their evidence. They chose that they are not going to give us their side of the story. And just because they are not going to give us their side of the story, we will not stop this important work. We'll hear from everybody and make findings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes our business, and we are done with the media briefing. We
Thank you
adjourn.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.